Okay. Hello, everybody. Small of a group here for our third meeting for the Cape Breton Island Autonomy meeting. I'm Darlene LeBlanc of the Gabaroos area. I was FaceTime chatting with Mark McNeil of the Cape Breton Island Autonomy group Friday evening, and that man is certainly a value of information when it comes to this island of Cape Breton. We discussed a few things about the group and the goals of the group and how to get Cape Breton population involved. First, I want to express that this group is for supporters of Cape Breton Island's quest for autonomy. By joining this group and becoming a member, you are acknowledging that you support the move that Cape Breton Island should be self-governance and that you truly believe that Cape Bretoners deserve better. This was a quote from Mark on the group Facebook page. A little bit about Mark McNeil. He is a University of Edinburgh Law School alumni and leads the Cape Breton Island Autonomy Group. Since he was a high school student, Mark has never given up on his view that Cape Breton Island should be its own province, a view shared by many. In 1978, as a high school student, Mark published in a local paper advocating that Cape Breton Island should be its own province. He stated that if the idea of Quebec being a nation within a nation is accepted, then surely Cape Breton as a province within a province should also be accepted. He argues that from 1784 to 1820, Cape Breton Island was a distinct colony, much like PEI in New Brunswick, created under similar royal proclamations and commissions with instructions from King George III. Unfortunately for Cape Breton Island, the death of King George III in 1820 saw Nova Scotia administratively annexed Cape Breton in October of that year without consultation with our island's colonial government. He adds, it's time Cape Breton Island's constitution is respected, restored, and a renaissance is rekindled. Cape Breton Island sought to pass legislation to raise revenue and finance public projects to accommodate the needs of its growing population, McNeil said. Nova Scotia's response with King George III passing was to secure Cape Breton Island revenue by annexing it. But McNeil argues Cape Breton Island's colonial constitution was never rescinded. The constitution of the executive authority in each of the provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick shall, subject to the provisions of this act, continue to exist at the Union until altered under the authority of this act, which is Part 4, Section 88 of the British North American Act. However, despite the island's colonial charter or constitution bestowed on it by King George III, Cape Breton Island attempt to call its legislature together were never allowed by Nova Scotia, and we are subsequently annexed without our consent. Mark stated that this was an arbitrary administrative action by Nova Scotia, and there is no reference to Cape Breton Island's colonial constitution, including our right to a government executive and legislature, to have ever been repealed, and it's like a dormant constitution that Nova Scotia took from us, never repealed, and thus is held within Nova Scotia's constitutional patrimony, heritage. Cape Breton Island's constitution within Nova Scotia has been protected by the British North American Act of 1867 and gives the island standing to call for restoration of its provincial constitution. Under older testimony, a constitution was often referred to as a colonial charter, or colonies were also called provinces, and charters setting out the governance of a colony or a province are a constitution. Cape Breton Island should be treated as a province and have its ancient royal charter recognized. Cape Breton would have a better chance of economically developing if it were its own entity instead of being a subrogated colony. Even the money Nova Scotia receives as equalization payments from the federal government has not been better used to help Cape Breton Island grow. The Human Rights Charter of the United Nations, the International Covenant of Economic, Social, and cultural rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights all affirm the right to self-determination of all peoples, by virtue of which they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. This was an excerpt from an article that was printed in the Canadian Law by Zina Olejnik, April 19th of 2022. Our interview of Mark. Okay. Even though the group membership is growing rapidly of late, 6,193 as of today, people are still not sure what this movement is all about. I explained to Mark that unfortunately no one from the group was available to speak on the group's behalf at the other meeting, so people are still not totally certain about what's going on within the group. That said, he sent me tons of information to review. I didn't have much time to go through the dozens of files he sent me. However, this is a basic summary of what the group is about, a bit of history of Cape Breton, and then we can open it up to the floor for ideas, innovation, questions, or more ideas, and put it all on paper. So this is considered an official meeting starting at 7 p.m. All right. Cape Breton Island is a rugged and irregular shaped island, approximately 175 kilometers in length by about 135 kilometers at its widest, and is located at the eastern extreme of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Its landmass slopes upward from south to north, culminating in massive highlands in its northern cape, the highest elevation in the Atlantic region. A saltwater lake, the Borders, forms the island core and has provided the only significant access to its interior for purposes of settlement. Divided politically into 4 counties, Cape Breton, Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria. It is separated from mainland Nova Scotia by a narrow strait of Canso, a bridge of about 2 kilometers built in 1955, and from neighbor Newfoundland, which is about 110 kilometers in the Cabot Strait. Its name likely derived from the Basque Cape Breton, a location near Bagnon, France. Cape Breton Island first residents were likely maritime archaic natives, ancestors of the Mi'kmaq. The island was probably known to Basque fishermen as early as the 15th century and was sighted and identified by John Cabot in 1497 and Jacques Cartier in 1534. Claimed by the French as part of Acadia, it remained largely undeveloped and unsettled, apart from a minor role as a fur trading and fishing outpost. When the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 ceded most of Acadia to the British, the French retained Cape Breton, which they renamed as Ile Royale. Shortly thereafter, they began construction of the Fortress of Louisbourg at a smaller harbor along the southeast coast. The French relocated and the French garrison was established in the central eastern part of St. Anne's. As the harbor experienced icing problems, it was decided to construct a much larger fortification at Louisbourg to improve defenses at the entrance of the Gulf of St. Lawrence and defend France's fishing fleet at the Grand Banks. The French also built the Louisbourg Lighthouse in 1734, the first lighthouse in Canada, and one of the first in North America. Louisbourg itself was one of the most important commercial and military centers in New France. Although Louisbourg was captured by New Englishers with British naval assistance in 1745, by the British again in 1758, Ile Royale remained formerly part of the colonial France until it was ceded to British under the Treaty of Paris in 1763. For its time, it was the most imposing European-style fortress in North America. When Louisbourg and the rest of New France fell to the British during the 7 Years' War, the fortress was destroyed. Britain merged the island with the adjacent colony of Nova Scotia, which present-day Peninsula, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. The first permanent settlement Scottish community of Cape Breton Island was Judique, settled in 1775 by Michael Moore MacDonald. He spent his first winter using his upside-down boat for shelter, which is reflected in the architecture of the village community center. He composed a song about the area called Aux Alains était, or fair is the place. Cape Breton became part of the colony of Nova Scotia in 1763, but it remained largely undeveloped until 1784, when it became a separate colony and remained so until 1820 as one of several separate jurisdictions created for the Loyalist refugees. The Loyalists who made Sydney the capital of their new colony were soon overwhelmed by the successive waves of Scottish immigrants. They occupied most of the available arable land along the seacoast and around the Bredor Lakes, and with a few hundred returning Acadians, they made up the bulk of the island's largely rural population, which subsisted mostly on farming and the inshore fishery. In 1784, British split the colony of Nova Scotia into three separate colonies: New Brunswick, Cape Breton Island, and present-day Peninsula of Nova Scotia. In addition to the adjacent colonies of St. John's, renamed Prince Edward Island in 1798, and Newfoundland. The colony of Cape Breton had its capital at Sydney and its namesake harbor fronting on Spanish Bay and the Cabot Strait. In 1820, the island was re-annexed to the jurisdiction of Nova Scotia following almost 40 years of tempestuous separate status. Large-scale shipbuilding began in 1790, beginning with schooners for local trade, moving into the 1820s to larger brigs and brigantines, mostly built for British ship owners. Shipbuilding peaked in the 1850s, marked in 1851 by the full-rigged ship Lord Clarendon, the largest wooden ship ever built in Cape Breton. During the first half of the 19th century, Cape Breton Island experienced an influx of Highland Scots, numbering approximately 50,000 as a result of the Highland clearances. Today, the descendants of the Highland Scots dominate Cape Breton Island's culture, particularly in rural communities. To this day, Gaelic is still the first language of a number of elderly Cape Bretoners. A campaign of violence and intimidation by the provincial school board led to the near extermination of Gaelic culture. Cape Breton has a proud Scottish heritage that finds expression in lively performing arts and a commitment to maintaining traditional crafts. The growing influx of English-dominant media from outside the Scottish communities saw the use of this language erode quickly during the 20th century. Following his successful invention of the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell acquired land near Baddeck in 1885 and established a summer estate, complete with research laboratories working with deaf people, including Helen Keller, and continued to invent. Baddeck would be the site of his experiments with hydrofoil technologies, as well as the Aerial Experiment Association, financed by his wife, which saw the first powered flight in the British Empire when the Aerial Experiment Association Silver Dart took off from the ice-covered waters of Bredor Lake. The emergence of a vital and expansive coal mining industry from the 1830s on completely transformed the island economy. The mines surrounding Sydney Harbour attracted the excess population of the already overpopulated rural areas and weighted the island towards the industrial base emerging in Cape Breton County. While the area was the most dynamic growth zone in the Atlantic region up to World War I, its boom was short-lived. When the coal mines were depleted and the steel mill became obsolete, the central Canadian capitalists, who had come to dominate the industrial advance, abandoned the area for greater fields, leaving the industry sector to survive on a succession of inadequate subventions, grants from the federal and provincial government. The result was a heritage of industrial decline, labor unrest, and a massive out-migration. There are several important educational and cultural institutions in Cape Breton, such as St. Anne's Gaelic College, since 1938, Cape Breton University in Sydney, that was established in 1951 as Xavier Junior College, and CBU in 2005. Also, the Miners Memorial Museum in Glace Bay, the Alexander Graham Bell Museum in Baddeck, and Fortress Louisbourg, a magnificent reconstruction of the 18th century site that was started in 1961. Cape Breton Highlands National Park, preserves the rugged beauty of the island's northern cape, around which curves the scenic Cape Trail. Okay, Cape Breton's status as a province within a province is irrefutable. An island with a distinct social, cultural, and political history is a land and people who are unceremoniously annexed not once but twice by Britain to the colony of Nova Scotia in Canada's brief pre-Confederation history. We were also previously twice as part of New France and a colony of France. Today, Nova Scotia's annexation of Cape Breton remains constitutionally questionable. Under international conventions on rights, human rights, if we can hold a plebiscite island-wide with a good turnout and a strong vote in favor of a return to our Constitution we had whilst in union with Nova Scotia joining Confederation and preserved under the British North American Act of 1867, then we have grounds, if Nova Scotia and Canada spurs us, to appeal the International Court of Justice and the international community for support. If our Prime Minister's logic holds that Quebec is a nation within a nation, then it must also follow that Cape Breton is a distinct province within a province. Cape Breton's status as a province within a province is irrefutable. As an island with a distinct social, cultural, and political history, and people who unceremoniously annexed, I read that already. Okay. Today's Nova Scotia annexation of Cape Breton remains, okay, got that. The Constitution was preserved under the North British, therefore we have grounds for separation from the mainland if Nova Scotia and Canada reject our plebiscite. Then we would be able to appeal to that International Court of Justice and international community for support. The question now for Nova Scotia Premier Houston is, are you prepared to follow the Government of Canada's lead of recognizing Quebec as a nation within a nation by tabling a motion in the Nova Scotia Legislature declaring Cape Breton a province within a province? I reasonably suspect our Premier would not dare polarize our province with such an issue. By taking a stand, however, for wary Cape Bretoners, I assert the proverbial Canadian Constitution can of worms is about to be reopened. Did you know that there was a petition to separate from mainland Nova Scotia in 2020? However, the draft never actually...
1920?
In 2020.
Okay.
The draft was never actually put into print, and it pretty much reads as follows. Cape Breton Island, counties of Inverness, Richmond, Victoria, and Cape Breton are hereby called upon to perform a provincial legislative assembly on an equitable appointment basis to serve until an elected assembly is gathered, and therefore your petitioners call upon the Parliament of Canada to act within its powers. 1, to recognize and accept Cape Breton Island as Canada's 11th province and newest member of the Canadian Union of Sovereign Provinces. 2, the people of Cape Breton Island have expressed the desire for recognition of the province of Cape Breton Island as a distinct society, which includes its French, Gaelic, and Mi'kmaq languages and their unique cultures within Canada. 3, the annexation scheme of 1820 has also deprived Cape Breton Island of its invaluable natural resources, roads, ports, railways, and other property, and reduced this otherwise free, happy, hard-working, and culturally rich island to a degraded condition of servile dependency on the government of Nova Scotia and Canada. 4, whereas ironically in 1868, Nova Scotia, Canada's first separatist province, passed a motion in the Nova Scotia House Assembly refusing to recognize the legitimacy of Canadian Confederation, and whereas an 1868 Act has never subsequently been rescinded, we, the residents of Cape Breton Island, hereby declare provincial independence and endorse the Confederation of Canada. Cape Breton also should be at the negotiating table as its own true provincial entity. Okay. It has been commented by some members of the Cape Breton Island Autonomy Group that Cape Breton needs independent structure governance based upon independent legislation, and that Cape Breton Island Autonomy is exactly about independent Cape Breton government, be it provincial or territorial. So I ask the question to you all, how do we do that? Here's something else to consider. Our island is dying, and we require fundamental governance change if we are to survive. We must ask, is Cape Breton declining because of circumstances, or is it by design? The formula the province of Nova Scotia applies to the distribution of equalization funding of the $2.8 billion for 2023-2024 that it receives from the federal government, a sum so large only because of the poverty and deprivation, particularly in CBRN, runs so deep. It's been misused to exacerbate socioeconomic disparities. Out of the $2.8 billion, roughly $600 million should go to municipalities such as CBRN because of their property tax disparity alone, which is the highest, not just in Nova Scotia, but in Canada. In short, if we are to force change, we must support these efforts by electing officials who are dedicated to Cape Breton and bring integrity and fairness back to politics, ensuring Cape Breton can prosper. This was an introduction to Cape Breton Autonomy Association, and let me end this by saying, here, you Cape Bretonians, descendants of the brave, enroll yourselves together, and freedom shall you have. Muster all your energies and set your country free. Despised by Nova Scotia, no longer shall you be. That was a news post in an early Cape Breton newspaper called The Spirit of the Times in 1844. So that's all I have to say on an introduction to Cape Breton Island Autonomy. And I hope that gives you all some insight to what the group is about. And hopefully when the next meeting comes, more people will come and they'll have some more ideas. We can get stuff on paper, maybe get the committee going, executive going, and all that. That's all I have to say, and I thank you for listening.
Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question, Archie. Like, if we're getting $3.1 billion from Nova Scotia, is all that going because of Cape Breton Island being poor?
No.
So what's the rest for?
Well, what ours is, I think it's like 18 point.
No, not that part, but not that six. I understand we're taking
Yeah, I think ours is
650. So what about that? I know of that
200
part,
this year.
but what about all that other 2 point?
Well, there's other areas of.
No, but the 650 million, we're taking that out of it. Now, all the rest of the money, the 3.1 billion, we're just taking 655 million out of it. And that's 238 for Cape Breton, blah, blah. So what about that other $2.3 billion?
Well, that's
Why did we get that? Is that because of Cape?
That's areas like Shelburne.
No. I'm talking about that part to 655. Shelburne, everybody gets part of that 655.
No, nobody gets none of it.
No, I understand that, but we got that other $2.3 billion. Is that because Cape Breton Island or these municipalities are poor? And it's all going to the mainland of Nova Scotia. So I'm saying we're always only talking about the $655 million, which we're claiming we're getting because Cape Breton is poor. But what about the other $2.3 billion? There's no understanding about
Yeah,
that.
well, see, we're only 18% of the province, right?
I understand, but
So there's another 80% of the province that is areas getting equalization money for certain areas.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like Shelburne.
In other words, Cape Breton gets nothing, basically, and the rest of mainland gets everything
I
else.
understand what you're saying, okay? But I'm just saying, we're always, with the whole issue we're discussing is just the $650 million. There's still $2.3 billion left. I don't know what that is all about.
Okay, the $2.3 million, what are you talking about? Is that what all of Nova Scotia gets?
Well, why would it get it? It's not poor. Every province doesn't
No.
get money.
The $2.3 million of equalization
Billion,
goes to Nova Scotia itself.
Why?
The whole it's allotted to Nova Scotia, the province.
Yes, I understand.
Right?
Right.
And a percentage of that is supposed to go to Cape Breton Island. Is it not?
No. We're still at the same thing. The percentage is coming out. $655 million comes out. And that's what we're talking about, the 238 million we should get from the 655 million. You're getting it. Where's the rest of the 2.3 billion dollars? Why do we get that? And what's that being spent on?
We're not getting that.
No, Nova Scotia gets it.
Nova Scotia.
Right, Nova
Yeah, but why
Scotia.
are they
Listen,
getting it?
just hear
We're
me
not
out.
Nova Scotia anymore, are we?
No, but hold on, just calm down. Listen, 3.2 billion or whatever it is. That's what the province got for equalization for all the areas in Nova Scotia.
All of Nova
I
Scotia.
understand.
They give them one check.
Okay, well, I'm not understanding your
3.1
question.
Well, okay, I mean, every province doesn't get equalization. So the whole province of Nova Scotia, therefore, must qualify because the whole province must be poor, right? Okay, and all I'm saying is, we're only ever talking about the 655 million that we all
Which is
know.
allotted to
And what's the
Cape Breton
rest of
anyway.
that money
Okay.
going and what's it all about and how?
So you're saying that 655 million is only being allotted to Cape Breton? The whole
No,
island of
I'm
Cape
not.
Breton?
I'm saying,
No.
as Nova Scotia Equalization Fairness is saying, Nova Scotia's getting $3.1 billion, okay?
Okay.
Out of that 3.1 billion, they're taking 650 million for this year municipality allotment. Out of that 600, we're supposed to get 238 million.
So you're saying every municipality in Nova Scotia gets 655?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm saying. out
I'm
of the
sorry,
three-
I'm not
there's
understanding your
There's
question.
$3.1 billion. Take 650
That's
million.
what listen, that's what the province got in equalization money.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Don't you?
I don't know,
Why-
okay.
Money.
Why
Can
are
you
we-
explain what he's
No, I
asking
don't
about the
understand.
655 million?
For three
What is
areas,
that?
Okay.
Just let me say
Hold
it
on.
this way.
He's getting
The
it.
$3.1 billion given to the province, okay? Let's say 600 million for Cape Breton Island, right? Okay, there might be another 300 million for Pictou County. It might be Shelburne, because they're areas that are no different than here.
I understand that, so.
Yeah.
So
That's
that,
not
but
what
that
I'm saying.
makes up,
Can you
that's
help me
all the
there?
equalization money that makes up the $3.1 billion is for all the areas.
Yeah.
So you're based on some
Like
percentage of
Halifax,
population, right?
okay, there's no equalization money.
It's based on percentage of population,
You know
right?
what I mean?
Percentage on the population allocated, so let's say that, allocated, we got, what's it, 200 and something?
Well, something 238 million, right?
200,
Yeah.
that's it there. Now we have, in the pool, right, what we have left here, 2 point something?
$2.3 billion.
Okay, now, that is now in the pot. We got two, we got the 200 and something million, right? Now, what you're looking at, right, we got that award, that's automatically. But we're also looking at the needs of the Nova Scotia. Exactly, and you see that the needs are greater in Cape Breton. Because the 2 point is not doing diddly squat, and we see buildings going up and buildings going up in Halifax, and and buildings and hospitals and all that bit. Yes, other provinces get it, but the needs of Nova Scotia or Cape Breton are not being adequately met, and that's where
And see, we
No?
gotta realize,
I'm
is-
still-
that's what I'm getting at.
Well, all I'm saying is this here. 3.1 billion comes, okay, now, we'll take out the 655 million.
Okay, wait.
That's what we're talking about.
What's that 655 million? What's it for? That's where I'm getting
That's
lost
what we're
here.
talking, you just said it right there.
Yes, and I thought that
650
was for this municipality,
No,
for
out
Cape
of that
Breton.
650
Well,
All
it
of
could
Cape
be.
Hold
It
it,
very well
stop.
could be.
Out of the 650 million, 238 is only for Cape Breton. The other millions go to the other provinces out of the 650. I want to know, what's the other $2.3 billion
The rest of the
for?
province.
For the rest of the
Rest of the
province.
But I think, but we have no, do we have any accountability where that is going?
That's not what I'm saying.
No, the
What I'm saying is,
listen, the $3.1 billion is equalization money, every bit of it. 3.1 billion is all equalization money given to.
For the whole province of Nova Scotia.
Province, yeah.
600 and some million
And
maybe
they-
for Cape Breton Island, but the rest
And I
is
know
for
they
different
allocate
areas.
that by population.
And when we're saying Cape Breton, we're only saying for the CBR red.
238 million, roughly, give or take.
Due because of the population.
There's outside of the
Yeah.
CBR red,
Yes.
there's equalization money for Victoria County.
They get it out of the $650 million, all that's coming. And I said, there's
Yeah.
another 2.3 billion. I'm just, Nova Scotia even get the money? Because it's, if, you know, if it's for Cape Breton being poor, then why is what's the two, that's something for me
I
to
know.
find out on my own.
I know, it's something to find
Well,
out.
I just.
Where's that being
Well, it's only
allocated to?
common sense, I mean, I understand myself, I don't even gotta know. I mean, it's to allow the government to take that money, spend it here to try to help the people on this island, so we don't need equalization money. But see, the system is structured, the way the system's structured, there's no authority to the premier to say, well, look, you know, we gotta take that money and put it on the island and make life better for those people down there, to increase their, you know what I mean? And what's happening is, you know what they're doing? They're taking that equalization money and Tim Houston put it into his budget, and guess what? He got a surplus this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know.
They want to
but
keep
you have
Cape
to-
Breton poor
and you
in
have
order to get the
understand.
higher equalization, and then
I-
they're not doing anything
If
for
they
Cape Breton
took
to
the
make us
money,
better.
the equalization money, and they spent it here every year, well, guess what? If they'd done that
We
for
wouldn't
3 or
be
4
poor.
years, we probably wouldn't be getting any equalization money. So, for the provincial government, they're using their heads, saying, hey, you know, we gotta keep them in poverty down there, because if we don't, there's no more equalization money.
Not
But
only
is
getting,
the
not only
province-
getting $3 billion in equalization, getting $3 billion for healthcare and about $1 billion for social work
Yeah.
programs.
That's right.
Comes from Ottawa, goes to Halifax. There's a total of $7 billion. How much do we see of that in Cape Breton?
Yeah.
Very little, I can tell you right now. Yes, we see lots of structures going up around here. We got the new Marconi campus going up there, stuff at the hospital. We pay taxes as well.
Yeah.
The taxpayers' money is paying for some of the stuff too as well, not just equalization payment monies, right? So we're really not getting our fair share of what's coming from
Yeah.
Ottawa.
And that's, remember, that is for a federal decision, not a provincial decision.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
a
I
provincial
wasn't
can't
there
really
film,
deal
document,
with
for
that.
everybody to see.
See, that's
Federal
why-
does that.
That's what this is open for
Just
discussion.
between us and common sense here, as we're sitting here as a group, you know, I'm no different than you, like, as far as the autonomy group, Mark McNeil's the autonomy group, I'm just a member the same as you, I belong to the, Nova Scotia Equalization Committee. I belong to any committee, I'll join any organization, as long as at the end of the day, it's to make life for Cape Bretoners better. But what people gotta understand is, the only way to change this is to wipe out the politicians. Elect all people that are concerned about Cape Breton Island, not political parties.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's why I go to the meetings, that's why I talk to people. I say to them, listen, these people are controlling every part
We're
of
getting
our
screwed
life.
since we've been annexed, basically, more or less,
Yes.
right? We've been, you know,
Yes.
we're not getting our fair share, yeah. So we're being treated like second class.
Okay, Frank, if you can find out that information, can you share that with me, what you find out?
I know
And
what
then
you're
I'll
trying to
post
say,
it.
but, I know what you're trying to say though, but you got that, you had that 3 million, let's say 3 million.
Billion.
Billion, I
3
mean,
billion,
billion.
out of the 3 billion,
Yeah.
there's 3 million
Yeah,
saved for
and
here, right?
that's, yeah, and,
Three.
Yeah.
and why is that
You said
being
2.6
Well,
million?
see, what I'm saying is this.
allocated for Cape Breton?
Just understand this, there's two numbers, hey, you're saying 600 and some, and I'm saying 200 and some.
No,
No,
There's no
just-
difference
just-
what was that. Out of the 238 comes out of the 650.
One is for the CBRM.
Oh,
and one is for Cape
238
Breton
million.
Island. So it could be 600 and some for Cape Breton Island.
Okay,
I'm talking about CBRM. The CBRM is being short-changed, because remember, the other
Just
part
good
of
luck
the
tonight,
island is
that's all.
controlled by the mainland.
Yeah.
I think so, and I don't, so it's okay. I think other people would.
But you know what I mean,
You know, I
Frank?
sit and look at other people, okay?
That's all I'm trying to explain to you, is that you
People
have
look-
to understand our whole island is
People
structured
look
in
too
two
good looking
sections.
when they
Yeah.
talk.
You know, we got Victoria County, which is part of the
well, that's what,
mainland.
that's what
So
you got.
their
You got that.
equalization is tied into the mainland in a separate group than the CBRM.
Right.
So if there's 650 million, that's for Cape Breton Island, but might be only 200 and some million for CBRM, the other 400 might be for the rest of the island. You know what I'm saying?
So that 238
I'm gonna
is
find
based
that
on
out.
Yeah, find
population,
out.
right?
You know, but
Just to,
Right,
nobody ever
18%
talks
of
about that. We should
population
have.
is what the 238 based on.
Like he said, no, healthcare.
I don't know
But
the
why?
numbers. You can
are
Google it
that
and
all
get it in
coming?
2 seconds.
You know,
Darlene,
because
you can
of
Google
all
that
the
and get it in 2
politics.
seconds.
You know what I
So
mean?
what
Yeah.
I'm saying to you is that
You're
there's
the only
I
ones
think
that are
that's what
being-
it's based on.
Yeah.
But the social economic
that two
aspects
point
of
whatever
Cape-
felt,
Cape
is
Breton
usually
Island,
felt in
right?
Halifax.
Is it, we should be
Strongly
getting
felt
probably
in
more than
Halifax,
230
wherever else is starved in
million,
there.
right? You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying,
We
it's just
generate
hard
a lot of
to,
that.
Yeah, but all we're talking about, I said that was the
From the,
650 million, which we're talking about, that's
for-
all
for the
everybody's
money
talking
because
about.
of the social
We're not
economic,
talking about the other money,
yeah.
and I don't know what's going on with it.
disparity in
Yeah.
the province, right? And of course, Cape
Because we're
Breton, we
getting
have some
ripped
of the
off
worst
on healthcare too,
disparity
so
in the
with
province,
healthcare money, we're
We've
not
got,
getting
the
our fair
highest
share.
unemployment
Oh,
rate,
heck.
the highest child.
And then here's the other one.
Care.
All the time they
Just
were
the numbers
saying
go on
that
and
the
on,
steel
the
plant
highest tax,
costed
you know, see, so
$3
we should be in
billion
fact getting more than 230
30
years,
years,
right? Based on our
Well, they didn't
economic
take
and
into
social
consideration,
conditions.
yeah, but we
You know
weren't
what I'm saying?
getting this money, so that was $3 billion.
But we'll take the
we weren't even getting.
238, that would make an enormous
You know what I
difference.
mean?
Imagine
So
we had been
the
getting
steel
that
plant
for
was
20
going, and we
years.
were getting that
That's at
subsidy.
230.
Okay, but, you know,
Right,
the money was there anyway, they weren't doing us any favor, we thought they were, but they weren't.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but now we know, we didn't know then that we
We've
were
been getting that
entitled,
money.
we should have been getting it when the steel plant was going, and then we weren't all those years, not just the past 5 years, that was going on since 1958.
Okay, so,
I found out. Did you know
seven
that?
twenty-seven.
No, since 1958.
Certainly
not
lots
since
to
1993.
discuss here about equalization,
Did you know
Cape
that Father
Breton,
Robert started the fight, I think,
also
in
high
1994.
rates
In
of
1998,
property
I
tax
came
in
in
Cape
town
Breton,
with my name in the
and
building,
our
in the
own
middle of the Joe Clark
natural
store, saying
resources
they wanted
and
to
whatever.
I showed the paper to Father
That should
Robert.
all
He
be
didn't tell me
staying here
nothing
in
about
Cape Breton.
equalization.
So
And I didn't
anyway,
go anywhere.
that's all
But
for
it's on the
now.
platform, right?
And if
You
we
got
find
me
out any
deposit
more
of
information, we
$30,000
will share it. And
you
also,
got
we'll
all the
let
money
you
back
know
if
when
you
the
got
next
enough votes.
meeting is gonna be.
And then after that, you
Hopefully,
don't. You went to
Mark
100,000,
Neal will
then
be back
$200,000
in town
deposit, and
for
you
the
got
next
no money
one.
back.
And he can
No.
host it. So
Yeah.
until
That's
then,
the point.
good night all, and
Well, guys,
thank you.
I'd like to have some of that money myself right now, but
Yeah. Imagine we have been getting that money for the last 20 years. Those property, 18% of the